Have you ever seen that before? Just an error occurred. I don't know. I think we're going live on YouTube, so we will. It must just not be live on Twitter, but regardless, we'll get her going here for those watching on YouTube. You're listening to the NFL Week 15 edition of the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod, a subsidiary, a valued component of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Nick Whalen, joined as always by John McKechnie on Thursday afternoons to break down what is finally, John, a full NFL slate. We're done with this bye week crap. Arizona's back. Washington's back. I don't think any teams opted for like a week 17 bye. I don't know if that's even an option. Could you get a week 18 bye? Are we giving teams buys whenever they want? But we got a full slate. I love how this week is divided up, right? Like, I still don't really know exactly why we had 2 Monday night games. I know I read a couple explainers. Like, I get it. I'm fine with it. I love it. You know, more kind of diversification of football throughout the week, I think, is better. We get 3 games on Saturday. We got a game starting in about 3 hours tonight. Very excited to break all this down with you as always.
Yes. Let's see here. I wish that they started the Saturday stuff last week. I know it's kind of sacrilege to say, but I don't find that there's a ton of entertainment value in the Army-Navy game. I enjoy the pageantry, and I, of course, have it on, but I would like to have NFL options as opposed to like FCS playoffs. So I wish there were games last Saturday, but love that we have them this week in addition to bowl games. So we're going to have football wall to wall on Saturday and an awesome slate on Sunday. But before we get into this week's games, can we get a little back pat for last week? I mean, you know, we don't gloat on this show. In fairness, we don't have the opportunity to gloat very often, right. But we went 4-1. We ran clean and pure on Sunday, only to be derailed by the Dolphins. And also, Johnny's parlay at 8-1 came in.
Oh,
that's right.
Hey, we love it. We love it. Yeah, it was a great week all around, man. Had some prop bets going. You know, did well in the Pick'em League. I'm making a late season charge right now. I was left for dead. I was outside the top 20 like 3 weeks ago. No, not anymore. And I tell you what, if both favorites had won on Monday night, I would be sitting even better. And so would we in the Circa contest. The Miami Dolphins were our lone blemish. And look, I will take full blame for that because right after the second of 2 turnovers for Tennessee that happened, it felt like in like 90 seconds of real time to just hand the Dolphins 2 touchdowns. I texted you like, hey, man, we're getting a miracle cover here. Let's go. And you were a little bit more tempered with your reaction. And turns out you were right because Miami ended up blowing that one, not only losing us the cover. I believe we had them at what, 13 and a half?
Yeah, 13. So we were, it was perfect. And then, and then the Titans scored, got the 2-point conversion. I immediately texted you back. I just want the Titans to win. I hope the Dolphins lose. Screw them.
Yeah, at that point, I'm trying to go through the machinations of like, all right, so we'll probably need a safety. Then we'll need another touchdown on top of that. And yeah, that is the mind of a football bettor. When you start doing that math, it almost never works out in your favor. But you're right, man. We'll take a 4-0 or a 4-1 week in the Circa contest. We're kicking off the fourth quarter of that. But yeah, would have been nice to go 5-0. I felt like we had it in hand after that Derrick Henry fumble on the pitch play. But good on Tennessee for rallying back. We'll talk about their matchup with the Houston Texans, whether or not maybe we want to use Tennessee if we don't have C.J. Stroud out there this weekend. But real quick, John, for the live listeners, like we said, we got Thursday Night Football starting in a couple hours. Most of you listening, this game will be ongoing or will have already happened. But your quick thoughts here. No Keenan Allen. As of right now, sounds very unlikely that Josh Jacobs will be out there as well.
So it's kind of sick, but I think with all the injuries and everything on the Chargers side, I kind of like them tonight. And the line really not budging over the course of the week. It's like, what do they know that we don't? I mean, not budging since Monday. Like it was when we were recording this time a week ago, the Chargers, I think, were like 4-point favorites. So it's moved a decent bit, but like over the course of the week, in response to the action coming in, it is held firm at 3 points in favor of the Raiders. I think Easton Stick's a wild card. I think that we didn't really get to see it on display last week, but this guy is kind of a crazy athlete. Like he, if you check out the RotoWire.com, you go to the football stats and you go to the combine stats, who has the greatest 3-cone drill of a quarterback in recorded combine history? It's Easton Stick.
Okay. I would have said Jared Lorenzen, but all right. Yeah, that checks out. There's absolutely a like berserker factor at play tonight, really for both teams. You could talk me into either side here. I reluctantly went with the Raiders in my article. That was I think I was writing it as Keenan Allen got ruled out, and to me that was kind of the kicker. But we also saw Quentin Johnston somewhat come alive by his standards last week. He did catch a deep ball from Easton Stick. Both of these teams, like Vegas is still, I think you could talk yourself into like hanging around in the AFC wildcard picture. I don't think either of these teams are ultimately good enough to make it. But now the Chargers, really for the first time in the Brandon Staley era, are just playing without any expectations. It's like this is a team that you just watch them. You watch Brandon Staley, you feel like he feels the weight of, wow, we are underperforming yet again. And we've seen some other teams, like the Giants, feel like they're just playing this freewheeling, whatever happens type of style, which sometimes that can be good for a team when you're just talking about a single isolated game and not really looking at what the real expectations are.
No, exactly. So I mean, the Chargers, they're able to kind of play free now. So I'm excited to see that. I think in the first matchup, which I believe was Aiden O'Connell's first start earlier this year, Khalil Mack had 6 sacks in that game or something wild to that end. So I'm expecting the Chargers edge personnel to be in that Raiders backfield. Mm-hmm. And, no Josh Jacobs. I don't think there's going to be any run game to kind of help out Aiden O'Connell. And I think that, there's just something funky that we might see with this Chargers offense. I'm hoping that Kellen Moore has kind of adjusted the game plan accordingly and everything like that. But, if we're looking at props, and I won't belabor this game too much longer, but again, Easton Stick being the athlete he's almost 20-1 to score an anytime touchdown tonight. So with that scrambling ability, I'm here for it.
Hey, maybe they got him returning punts tonight. Who knows? I mean, I got to be honest. I didn't realize he was this caliber of athlete. I'm sticking with the Raiders. They're at home, sitting right at 3. It's like, I don't know, might as well just take the money line at that point. But this is clearly a stay away. We never even talked about, getting our entry in early because we got to get a play in on Chargers Raiders. And in general for the Circa contest, I think the only Thursday game we've played all year was the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving. Right. It's just, in my opinion, it's just not a good idea, especially this week of all weeks when we still have some major injury news that we're waiting on. Let's get into the Saturday slate. So we got 3 games on Saturday. John, our first 3 games of the week, counting tonight, are all backup quarterback versus backup quarterback. We will not see a true starter until Saturday night, Broncos-Lions. But we begin with the noon window on Saturday. Vikings at the Bengals. This number holding at 3 for the most part throughout the week. That's where it sits at DraftKings right now. That's where it locked in the Circa contest. Total is 40.5. That's been on the move in a downward direction throughout the week. I like Cincinnati here. I don't like some of the movement or maybe the lack of movement that we've seen, in reaction to Nick Mullins getting the start for Minnesota. I know, a few years ago, he looked decent in a couple of starts for the San Francisco 49ers. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks look decent for the Niners. I think this is a completely different situation, although the Vikings will get Justin Jefferson back. And that is it's a big boost. We didn't really get to see what he looks like, over the course of a full game last week. Glad that he, of course, avoided a major injury. But I like Cincinnati to keep it rolling here at home.
I do too. I almost hate how much I like Cincinnati at this number. Yeah. I mean, they looked good last week. They obviously looked good the week before. So, Jake Browning has these guys going. They've gotten Chase Brown involved in the mix. A little bit worried about the defense for the Bengals. It really hasn't been anywhere close to where it's been under Lou Anarumo over these last couple of years. But I think with him getting the opportunity to face off against a quarterback like Nick Mullins, I think that he's going to throw the kitchen sink at him. And there's no real run game to lean on in Minnesota's case with Madison being dinged up. It's going to be the Ty Chandler show there. And I don't think that's a great show by any means. So I like the Bengals here. I don't see why it's not closer to 4.5. And I don't really see a huge case for the Vikings here. As far as a prop goes, I am interested in Hawkinson because the Bengals are so bad against tight ends. And you figure, tight ends tend to be a safety blanket for backup quarterbacks. So I think he's going to be really busy. But beyond that, not much to like on the Vikings side here. I think that the Bengals at home get another win. And I was talking about this with Mario earlier, where it's you have to be in such a weird headspace if you're a Bengals fan. The season effectively ends 3 weeks ago when Joe Burrow injures his wrist and his season's over, and you lose to the Steelers, and it's all right, well, let's just tank it out and get a good draft pick, and then kind of have things go go well next season, blah, blah, blah. But now you've banked a couple of wins against AFC teams, like an important win, really, especially against Indianapolis last week for wild card purposes. Like if you're a Bengals fan, it's kind of like, let's just see where this goes here, and let's try to get into the playoffs and see what happens. Them and the Browns kind of in a very similar type of headspace, and you know what, I do like the Bengals here.
It's interesting you bring that up. We talked to Charlie Goldsmith from the Cincinnati Enquirer, really good beat writer, been covering the Bengals for a while. He was on our SiriusXM show last night, and I basically asked him that same question. I'm like, not looking at the fan base, but the team specifically. I'm like, you're around this team all the time. You know the team as well as anybody. Like, has there been a noticeable shift in mindset, energy, over these last couple of weeks? And he was like, yes, absolutely. He said it was the Jacksonville game that really changed things. He's like, this was a team that was clearly down on their luck, clearly felt like their season was over, especially after how the Pittsburgh game went, the first game without Joe Burrow. And he said as soon as they won that Jacksonville game, he's like, there's been a noticeable switch that flipped in that locker room. And he said they know that they're not going to win the Super Bowl. Like, that's still off the table. But he said there's a kind of a renewed sense of optimism of just, let it ride, see what you could do with this season, get a wild card spot and see what happens. So yeah, that's it's hard to quantify what that really means for betting purposes with the Bengals, but I like Cincinnati here. I trust the quarterback more, which is crazy because he's making his fourth career start. But I also trust the players around him more too. I mean, Chase Brown has been fantastic the last couple of weeks. He's emerged as a really nice change of pace to Joe Mixon. Jamar Chase is off the injury report. T. Higgins looked better last week. So obviously getting Justin Jefferson back, that's big for Minnesota. But even with that, like, you take Joe Burrow away, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else suffers dramatically, right? It's like you don't have quite as much upside fantasy-wise with guys like Chase and Higgins and whatnot, but they're still great players. They're still all pro caliber players around Jake Browning. And, that's part of the reason that I like Cincinnati. So we're in agreement on that one. I like the Bengals -3. Steelers-Colts. Colts -1.5. Total is 42. They are at home. This is a big stay away for me, John. And this is my 1-pointer as of right now in the Pick'em League for the week.
Understandably so. I mean, the arguments can be made for both sides, and both of them feel bad, and you feel like you're poking holes in your own argument, making your case. The Steelers have had a disastrous last couple of weeks. I mean, your favorites. You're kind of entering this stretch of the season where it's like, okay, we have some winnable games here. We need to bank these wins. We need to beat the Cardinals at home. We need to beat the Patriots at home, and you flub both of them, and now your backs are against the wall, and you're going on the road to face it. A pretty solid Indianapolis team. I think this is the time to buy back in on Pittsburgh because they're underdogs. And Indianapolis, some of their best work has really mostly been done on the road this year. They haven't been unbeatable at home by any stretch. So I like Pittsburgh here. There's not a ton of great rationale behind it. It's hard to build it when you have Mitchell Trubisky looming in the background of whatever you're trying to say in favor of Pittsburgh. But I think that as long as the defense is healthy, they get Watt in there, they get Highsmith in there. You still have Minkah Fitzpatrick and JPJ. I think that's enough to slow down this Indianapolis offense. And I think that the Indianapolis defense, for its own part, can make some mistakes. It's a pretty mistake-prone unit. It gets a lot of sacks, but beyond that, there's a lot of cushion that could be had for this Pittsburgh offense. So I like Pittsburgh here, but to your point, this is like one of the lower confidence picks that we're going to go through today.
It just feels like a classic Mike Tomlin spot. It's like this is to the Steelers what last week's game was to the Patriots in some ways, where you're like, man, they have hit rock bottom. They can't do anything. They can't score. They can't move the ball. We hate their quarterback. Their coach feels like he's on the way out. And then, of course, they find a way to win straight up. And I kind of feel that way about the Steelers this week. It's still a better team, I think, at heart than they've shown. And, like you said, Trubisky is the big thing. It's like there's just nothing there. There's no – I think there was this belief early on that it's like, yeah, Pickett, Trubisky, there's not really that much of a difference. And I'm not the biggest Kenny Pickett guy, but there's just something like wildly uninspiring about watching Mitchell Trubisky sail balls out of bounds on 3rd and 7 over and over again. So the Steelers are going to have to show up on defense, right? Like the Colts are that team that – they didn't they'll Jekyll and Hyde you on any given week. Like they were terrible last week. They needed a defensive touchdown just to get to 14 points. If Pittsburgh can hold them under 20, I think they win this game. But if the Colts have one of those, positive variance games where Minshew's slinging it all over the place and they're ripping off big plays and they're scoring in the mid to high 20s, then I don't know if Pittsburgh keeps up. And that's why it's so tough to me. So I'm labeling this one a stay away, but I did go with Pittsburgh in my article. Again, we can talk about all the Mike Tomlin underdog stats if we want, but this just feels like a Tomlin, coaches and wills this team to a victory type of game on the road. Yep. Broncos-Lions.
There.
What do you got? You got one more?
I do not, but we do have a super chat from our guy, Lucky Leo. He wants to know. So we got to put on our fantasy hats here, Nick.
Okay.
Do you have it handy?
No, I don't, but I will figuratively put it on. It's on.
Okay, perfect. Because we got a toughie. Odell Beckham, Jerick McKinnon, Jamal Williams, I'm guessing, or maybe Jameson, or Gabe Davis this week as the flex option. I guess let's talk through that. I mean, Odell, for his part, I think has been the most explosive of the Baltimore receivers, especially of late. He's starting to look a lot better. McKinnon obviously gonna have his share of the backfield just because we're not expecting Pacheco to be out there.
Yeah, no practice for Pacheco today, for what it's worth.
You are the inside Pacheco guy. You are the company Pacheco man. So that there's that to consider. But I don't like the matchup on the road against the Patriots. I think the Chiefs will be fine. We'll get to that. But I don't think that it's going to really come on the ground. You're really counting on him, sort of recapturing the late season magic from last year and maybe catching some touchdowns. As far as Gabe Davis, I think is the interesting one on here because the over under in that game is set at like 50 and a half. So it's one of the higher scoring games that we can expect for this one. And then Javonte Williams, not Jameson, being the other one. All told, I think it's Odell. I think Odell's my pick of this litter. The volume might not be crazy, but I think that's okay when you bring in like the half point PPR context instead of the full. I think what you're counting on from Odell is yardage and touchdowns, and I think he can provide that this week.
I lean Odell as well, especially because Lucky Leo has Lamar at quarterback, and you're kind of looking for the double up there. What we have not mentioned is how terrible the Jags defense has been the last couple of weeks, and they've actually held up decently well against the run, but they've been terrible against the pass. They're a bad tackling team. Tyson Campbell's been banged up. When he's out there, he doesn't look anything near like himself. So I would lean Odell as well. I would go Javonte next, and then Gabe Davis. I mean, the thing with Gabe Davis is it feels like he's either going 4 for 120 and 2 touchdowns or like 1 for 12. It's like I think it kind of depends how you feel about the rest of your roster, I suppose. You're in the fantasy playoffs. If you're up against it, if you're projected to lose by 15 points and you're just like, man, I need somebody who can give me 25 fantasy points. Like, yeah, it's conceivable that Gabe Davis could do that in what could very easily be a shootout against a Dallas team that, as a good defense, but also a very mistake-prone defense, right? We saw Deron Bland a couple weeks ago getting burned over and over, right? He has 6 pick sixes on the year, but he'll also give up yardage, right? I think everybody's kind of adopted that Trayvon Diggs mantra in that secondary. So yeah, Odell to me is probably the perfect, or at least the best mixture of upside and floor for me.
Yep.
So that's where I would lean if this was my lineup, especially with Lamar in there. But again, I like the matchup for Javonte Williams. I mean, teams have been piling up yards all over Detroit as well. So I don't think that's a bad option. It's tough because you have 3 guys that I think are in pretty good contention here. I'd feel relatively comfortable starting Odell, Javonte, or Gabe Davis. But sometimes the good problems to have make it even more difficult if you choose the wrong guy. But Odell Beckham, final answer. Appreciate the question. Appreciate the super chat, Lucky Leo. All right, let's get to Detroit and Denver. This game is in Detroit. Lions 4.5-point favorites at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Our totals up at 48, one of the highest of the week. I believe that is our 3rd highest, behind only Commanders, Rams, and Cowboys-Bills. This is a really, really tricky one for me, John. I'm waiting for like the Lions resurgence game. We thought we maybe had that against New Orleans 2 weeks ago, and they were fantastic on offense for 2 quarters and then almost allowed the Saints to come back and win that game. Kind of a complete no-show by the Lions last week. Allow a long touchdown drive on the first drive of the game. And it just felt like they were immediately panicking. That's what really worries me about the Lions. It's even in games where things are going well for them early on, like the New Orleans game, if they have like 2 bad drives in a row, things just seem to go haywire. Like Jared Goff loses his confidence. He's throwing balls low into the ground. Receivers are running the wrong routes. Dan Campbell is just going for it on any 4th down just because you feel like you got to get it all back in one possession. And, Denver's a team that just, for the most part, doesn't really make mistakes The Houston game, that's the only one they've lost in their last 7. And it's not a coincidence that Russell Wilson threw 3 picks in that game, right? Like when they can dictate their style, when they can methodically move it down the field, they'll hit 1 or 2 chunk plays to Cortland Sutton, but other than that, it's screens, it's keeping the ball on the ground. That worries me. If Detroit allows Denver to do that early on, we've just seen the Lions kind of go into panic mode too many times. So where do you come in on this one?
I've been pretty firmly on Denver throughout the week. I think to me, the Lions and the Seahawks were 2 teams that I've kind of circled as fraudulent, and it's shown a lot more, of course, in the case of Seattle. They've lost 4 straight. It's been a tough schedule for them, to be fair, in that stretch, but even still, had some lingering concerns about them before things went completely off the cliff. But the Lions, for the era of good feelings back in September, I think I'm not saying that they're gonna miss the playoffs or anything, but like I wouldn't be like completely shocked if they somehow lost their grip on the NFC North crown. Like it feels like something's.
I think Green Bay needed to win last week. I think they're going to back their way into the division. I don't see that happening.
Okay, fair enough. All right, it gets me back focused here, but basically. Something's up with the Lions. I think the defense, whereas we used to be able to say like, oh, it's a roller coaster. Like sometimes they have a good week and sometimes they have a bad one. Now it's consistently a poor defense. Aaron Glenn seems to be in over his head. The personnel is not good enough to kind of paper over that. So I know that the Broncos aren't a particularly explosive offense, but they're methodical. And to your point, they're for the most part mistake free. And I think this is a fairly friendly number that we're getting to with it being well over field goal, Lions -4.5. So I think that if the Broncos lose, they don't lose by a lot. I think they keep it within the number. I'm tempted by the Broncos money line, but for the purpose of just the spread here, give me the Broncos +4.5.
So what worries me about Denver is this is their 3rd consecutive road game. Like that wears on you. You don't see a ton of 3 straight road trips in the NFL, and tough spot to play in Detroit. But at the same time, there are some trends that I think would point you away from the Lions. Jared Goff just 1-5 straight up on short rest with the Lions, 2-8 straight up on short rest in his last 10 starts in this spot. Obviously, Denver's on short rest as well, so it's not like that's that big of an advantage. And we're talking one day as opposed to playing on a Thursday, but still something to consider there. We mentioned it when talking about Javonte Williams. The Lions have allowed 4 straight 100+ yard rushing games to their last 4 opponents. They did that only 1 time in their first 9 games. Like something has dramatically changed with this defense. I know they've been banged up. They've been missing some guys in the interior, but it kind of feels like a runaway train. And I don't know if this is something that you can necessarily just flip the switch on in any given week. So I do think Denver's going to have a chance to control this game. I think they might be the better coach team at this point as well. I know everybody loves Dan Campbell, but I think Sean Payton, it's maybe not getting enough credit for the midseason turnaround that he's been able to orchestrate with Denver. And I think I would take Detroit to win this game, but I think it's a 3-point game. This is a 24-21, 27-24 type of game to me that the Lions pull out at home. But if you're giving me the 4.5 with Denver, I'm going to take that. Let's go to the Sunday slate. And we begin, John, Falcons-Panthers. Total sitting at 33.5. We'll get to that in a moment. The Falcons are 3-point road favorites, as they should be, over a 1-12 Panthers team. I did some digging on the weather in Charlotte. At 1 p.m., according to our friends at weather.com, there's a 95% chance of rain. And the winds, the steady winds, not gusts, are projected to be sitting at 23 miles per hour. So I love the under on 33.5. I mean, even without the weather, that might be something that I would look into. And, on the prop side of things, I did a video that'll be up on our Instagram, a little bit later in the week. I love the under on Bryce Young, 187.5 passing yards. Like he's already gone under this number. He's gone under this number in 5 of his last 6. He has not had a 200-yard game. He hasn't even really been close since week 8. And again, 95% chance of rain, 23 mile per hour winds. I mean, give me the under on Desmond Ridder, 186.5 passing yards, and give me the over on Tyler Algier, 29.5 rushing yards. I think this is going to be a run fest. I think it's going to be super ugly. It's going to be sloppy. Carolina, quietly ran for 200+ yards last week against the Saints. So that is something that they at least kind of have in their back pocket. I mean, you could quibble about how effective it was when you lose that by 3 scores. But I think we get a really low scoring game, a sloppy game. I don't see Carolina winning outright. I think this actually does kind of play to Atlanta's favor. I think the more you run, the more you're limiting mistakes by Desmond Ridder. But the sloppiness factor here maybe steers me away from considering Atlanta -3 in the Circa contest.
Yeah, I don't want to touch this for the contest purposes. It's a divisional game, weird weather. So yeah, it should be ugly, and with the number being what it is, probably best to hold off. Bijan, I think it's going to be a nice game for Bijan. You can get him to score 2 touchdowns for like plus 850, considering that one as an option. But beyond that, I think he's going to crush. But beyond that, this Falcons defense, I think, is going to be pretty suffocating. It's going to be another long day for Bryce Young. I know you said a minute ago, the Panthers quietly ran for 200 yards. Question for you. Is there anything that the Panthers do that isn't done quietly? Like, no one really pays attention other than the fact that, oh, yeah, they lost again.
No, they're the most boring team in the NFL. They are. And in some ways, that's a good thing because I think it's deflected from the fact that they're a complete disaster and are 1-12. But I feel like we make fun of 3 or 4 other teams way more than we do the Panthers. They're just boring. They're going to be the most boring 1 or 2 win team in NFL history. They haven't done anything comedic, which actually kind of sucks, right? If you're going to lose that many games, you should be doing more funny things. You should be running out of the back of the end zone, things like that. And meanwhile, it's the Jets and the Commanders and the Falcons and the Giants that are racking up all the comedy. New England this year. That's who the Panthers are, man. They just kind of they actually, like, if you watch them in the second half, it's like they almost play as if they're leading. There's like, well, we're just going to run out the clock on this. We're down 7, but we have no chance to come back. It's weird. There's no sense of aggressiveness or ability to climb back into games because they're always playing from behind, of course. And you just don't really feel like they have that in them. And to me, I think they're multiple years away, from getting this thing turned around. But that's a conversation for another day. I think we'll label this one a stay away as well. Really fun game that I'm looking forward to. Bears-Browns. Would not have had this one circled even 3 weeks ago. Certainly would not have had it circled coming into the season. Browns 3-point favorites at home. 38.5 is our total. I am thoroughly vexed by this one, John. I would like to trust the Browns. At the same time, it felt like to me Jacksonville played a disaster game on a number of levels and still almost won on the road last week. Joe Flacco gets a lot of praise for the way he commanded that offense, but Cleveland really struggled to run the ball on a bad Jags defense. They turned it over 3 times. Can we trust them here at home?
I do, because I'm not ready to trust the Bears yet. And I know it's crazy to say about, Joe Flacco coming off the couch, making his 3rd start type of thing, but the defense is pretty lights out, especially at home. And Flacco, for his part, looks at least competent. And I think when you have a roster build like the Browns do, that's all you really need. I mean, like, is he really playing that much differently than Deshaun Watson was when things were going pretty good earlier this season? I don't know. It's not too dissimilar in my opinion. So I think that there's a little bit more openness in this passing game, a little bit more aggressiveness going down the field with him. So there's that element. I know that the Bears are playing much better defensively. We loved them last week against the Lions. And they performed well. They did what they were supposed to do. And it has people saying, which I've kind of been cracking up over the course of the week with Bears Twitter. They're like, we're 5-4 in our last 9. Like that's something that the Bears fans are thumping their chests about. But for me, we do have a note here that it's Browns -3.5. Apparently in the contest. So
in the contest, Sorry, I usually read the DraftKings lines for the purposes of this pod, but in Circa it is 3.5.
Okay, all right. So that is something to consider for us. But yes, the live line being 3. But either way, I think Cleveland can get this done regardless of it's 3 or 3.5. I think that the mistake-free nature of Fields last week, can he carry that into a road game against a defense that tends to play a lot better at home? I'm not so sure. I want to believe in Justin Fields. We're almost there, but I think this is a big, kind of proving ground for him. And I'm happy to eat my words if he makes me look wrong here, but I'm siding with the Browns here.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are on the road at the Green Bay Packers. Our number is 3.5 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. This one also 3.5 in the Circa contest. total sitting at 42. Buccaneers are, I believe, 1-14 straight up in their last 15 games at Green Bay, going all the way back to the days of the NFC Central when these teams were for some reason in the same division for a while. Harkening back to Warren Sapp and Brett Favre.
Actually, by the way, Central.
I just watched the Reggie White 30 for 30 last night. Pretty wild guy. I knew he was religious. I didn't know he was that religious, but it was worth watching if you're wondering. I mean, I love the ones that go deep. If you're a sports fan, like a lot of the recent 30 for 30s, I feel like are like, oh, it's 48 minutes. Great. And you're always like, man, I wish that was twice as long. This one's an hour 45. So you're getting the full depth. I never really realized the story of like how he ended up in Green Bay via free agency and all that. So I'm not going to spoil it. A lot of you maybe know that story already, but highly endorsed giving that a watch. It's out on ESPN Plus right now.
Nice.
What do we think here, John? I think Green Bay kind of through everybody into a tizzy, right? We were all over Giants plus 6.5 last week. I actually wish we would have used that in the contest in retrospect. Easy to say now, but that was a popular pick in Circa. The Packers, Circa does a cool thing where they released, the number of people who picked each side each week. Packers minus 6.5 was like one of the 3 fewest picked, unsurprisingly. I didn't think the Packers would lose that game straight up. But that was one that, clearly they were not prepared for. Right away, you just knew, oh boy, this is going to be a sweat. Jordan Love missed 2 huge throws on, I think, Packers' first 2 drives on third down, just sailing balls. He couldn't even throw a spiral in the first half. Lost a fumble, threw a pick. Green Bay got it together. Love played, I actually thought, a pretty good second half. But defensively, man, this team is a mess. The pitchforks are out for Joe Barry once again. Yeah. They had been placed back in the barn for like a month, but no, they're back. I can tell you that here in Wisconsin. The Packers have allowed 4 200-yard rushing games this season. 4. Can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers capitalize on that? I'm not saying they're rushing for 200. I don't think they can. I don't think they're actually capable of putting up that kind of total. But I have already invested in Rachaad White over 80.5 rushing yards.
Well, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, when that's been the recent issue for the Packers or the season-long issue with all his 200-yard performances, the best type of matchup is one like playing against the Buccaneers, and they're at home. And I think people are, pretty salty with the results from Green Bay last week. To your point, I have a Twitter friend who announced it in a chat. I've been banned by the Packers subreddit once again. So yeah, I guess he was saying some stuff about Joe Barry as well. But beyond that, I think, what we talked about last week with the Bucs and Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles and their historical trends against the spread or as underdogs, I think they come into play this week. I think that going up to Green Bay in December for a team like Tampa Bay, I think this is the spot to go back to Green Bay. I think the number is friendly enough. At 3.5 is not lovely. We'd prefer it to be at 2.5, of course, but even still, I think that, we were, very excited about this Packers turnaround, this time a week ago. It was obviously a really bad game against the Giants, but I think that they are more what they had been the previous 3-4 weeks than just last week's game. So I will take the Pack in this one. And usually I'm a guy who's like, oh no, I can see the Bucs doing this. Not this time.
For what it's worth, it's actually supposed to be relatively warm in Wisconsin this weekend. Like, I'm playing golf tomorrow. It's not going to be quite that warm on Sunday, but I think we're talking like high 30s, low 40s. So you're not getting frozen tundra per se. Still not an advantage though by any means for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And like you said, Todd Bowles, one of the worst underdog coaches in NFL history, not just among current coaches. 15-42 straight up in his career as a dog. 24-30-3 against the number as an underdog. He's 25-16 straight up as a favorite. So yeah, if you want to lean on that trend, I get it. I think, again, Green Bay felt like they played almost a worst case scenario half against the Giants and, still rallied back, still probably should have won if you're not in like, mega prevent defense and just allowing the Giants to rip off big plays and get down into field goal range. If Green Bay finds a way to win that game, we're probably talking about them quite a bit differently. So this is one where I really wanted to try to be careful to not overreact to last week. I still don't love the Packers at 3.5. 2.5, sure. 3.5, I don't know.
No, that's definitely fair. Like it's definitely not on like the easy like top 5 games that we're going to be targeting this week. But I think it's at the least in the discussion. mostly because I think this is the time to fade the Bucs more than anything.
Mm-hmm. All right, that brings us to the Jets and the Dolphins. Little AFC East battle down in Miami. John, last time we saw these teams, the Dolphins returned a pick six on a Hail Mary on the final play of the half, but that was Tim Boyle. We're back to Zach Wilson now, who I think you could say is coming off of maybe the best half of his career last week against Houston. I am not counting on that continuing. I will say that. I lean Jets here. The number's 8.5. Total's down at 37.5. We could get some movement here, once we get clarity on Tyreek Hill, but we also might have a bad weather game down in Miami. It's going to be warm. It's going to be balmy, 77, 20 mile per hour winds and light thunderstorms, I am told, for Sunday afternoon. So not really getting that typical Miami weather advantage that you might think. Where do you come in on this game? Jets plus 8.5, Miami minus 8.5.
So you're talking about trying to not be too overreactionary, and then you're talking about Zach Wilson, and mind you, that is AFC Offensive Player of the Week, Zach Wilson, which
technically correct, yeah.
As our guy Mario said, in case you were wondering if you were supposed to take those awards seriously, but excuse me, 1 second, we're good. A little bit of holiday cold here, but beyond that, let's see here. So I don't know. I think I kind of like the Jets here. I think that the Dolphins are a little bit dinged up. I think you could easily see them, doing something fairly similar to what they did on Black Friday to the Jets. But I think the Jets have to be feeling a little bit better about themselves. We've been worried over the last couple of weeks when it comes to the Jets, where it's like, when does the defense just say, screw this, But the offense actually showed a pulse last week against the Texans. We kind of had a scent out for that game with the way that the line was moving. It's like, how are the Jets how's the line moving towards them? But in this setup, I feel like if they can just continue to again have the pulse on offense, I'm not expecting them to score 30 points again, but if they can do their own part on offense and slow down this Miami attack that is banged up. I mean, Tyreek Hill, even if he plays, is he going to be himself? I'm not so sure. Raheem Mostert on the injury report earlier this week as well. So I don't know. I mean, we saw what this offense looks like sans Tyreek last week, and it was pretty uninspired. And it's a really tough Jets defense that I think is playing with a little bit more confidence right now. So 8.5 is a lot. I like the Jets here.
I think I like the Jets as well. It's worth noting that a week and a half ago, this line was 13.5. And, part of it is the conditions. Part of it is, what happened last week. And more than anything, I think the injuries. We need to wait and see on Tyreek Hill. That to me is the biggest chess piece, obviously, for Miami. And, I think we kind of got the result that a lot of people had thought was maybe bubbling under the surface for a while of like, all right, let's see what this offense looks like without Tyreek Hill. You want to try to tell me that Tua is the MVP? Well, what happens when he doesn't have Tyreek? This offense looked terrible, right? And it wasn't just that, but the offensive line too, it was crumbling, right? Without Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, I thought that was part of the reason I loved Miami so much last week was you're taking one of the best interior defensive tackles in the entire league out of the equation. And Tennessee put as much pressure on Tua as he's faced at any time this season. Now, another part of that is Connor Williams, their starting center, went out early. He's done for the year, torn ACL. I don't think it's a coincidence that 3 plays later, there's a fumbled quarterback center exchange inside the 2-yard line by Miami to hand over a turnover. Their entire offensive line is banged up. One of their guards is unlikely to play. We'll see if they get Teron Armstead back. That feels like a 50-50. Even their backup center, Liam Eichenberg, he's on the injury report. Raheem Mostert, he's on the injury report. I don't think Achane's going to play this week. Tyreek Hill seems like a true 50-50. If you got to make a pick right now, to me, it's Jets. If the injury luck trends in a better direction for Miami, I think 8.5 suddenly becomes a pretty friendly number. But at the same time, Miami now kind of has to reprove themselves, right? They've had to do it a few times this season. They had some letdowns against good teams on the road. They've done nothing but clean up against bad teams at home. And then now that illusion is shattered in week 14. So it's a tough spot here, but I do think the Jets are playing with some momentum now. It's just, you can't count on that version of Zach Wilson showing up again. That's what scares me.
No, you can't, but I think you could also say that, as long as it's mistake-free and methodical, and if they get set up in some short fields, which the defense could provide, I feel like that this could be something that plays into the Jets' hands, and if they keep this to like a low-scoring game, I think they definitely hang within this number. I'm not going to go so far as to say that they win this one, but I think that they make this one close, and the Dolphins are going to have to sweat again. And to your point, Benson noted chat and live viewer notes all of the injuries across that Dolphins offensive line. I mean, Teron Armstead, again, like you said, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, doubtful, Austin Jackson a little bit dinged up. So, I mean, that's a lot to account for, especially if Tyreek is not himself. So I think all signs kind of point to the Jets here.
All right, Giants-Saints. Fun game in the NFC. Saints are 6-point favorites at home. That's our number in the Circa contest as well. Another low total, sitting at 39, which is actually relatively high these days. I mean, I don't think 39 even counts as that low. That's like average. Saints, do they deserve to be given 6 here? Is there a comeback to earth game for the New York Giants? Like, just as hesitant as I am about Zach Wilson, I kind of feel the same way about DeVito. It's like, he looked good. You got to give him his credit, especially doing what he did on the ground. But it's also clear to me that Green Bay was just not prepared whatsoever for the fact that he could run. And I think the Saints are going to be better prepared on defense. I still don't think they're a great team overall in terms of their coaching. I think that's probably hindered them. Obviously, Derek Carr feels like his teammates are just like done with him at this point. Yep. That continues to build. Are we willing to take the Giants side of this at +6? I really don't know. This was my runner-up for the Nick Whalen stay away of the week in my article.
Yeah, it's right there. I have no idea what to do with this game because I want to believe in the Giants, but then I see the number being posted what it is, and it's like, all right, maybe I need to just get Tommy Cutlets out of my mind and realize that this is a better Saints team. But the Giants defense has been playing better of late. They're getting after the quarterback. Kayvon Thibodeau coming on pretty strong there. So there's things to like on that side. Wink Martindale, a very like blitz heavy type of defensive coordinator. So they're going to be getting after Derek Carr a good bit. I want to believe in the Giants here, but seeing the spread be what it is, it makes me think that the Saints probably cover it. But it is worth noting the Saints just covered their first game at home this year last weekend against the Panthers. So basically, I don't even count that. They were 0-5 at home against the number prior to last week. My heart says to take the Giants. My head says the Saints, and therefore my official stamp on this game is to stay off of it.
Could not agree more. I'm glad that's where we come in on this one because I will be staying far, far away as well. Quick reminder, John, it is football season. You may not be aware of that, but it is football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. They got the best pool in history, Stadium Swim, 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game, every single game, from college to the pros. You can catch all the action poolside. They got a variety of seating options, day beds, temperature-controlled cabanas. You can just throw a towel down, lay out there, been there. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino. It's open 365 days a year, all sports, all seasons. Book today at circalasvegas.com. That's circalasvegas.com. Texans-Titans, John. Titans are 3-point favorites currently at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Our total is 37. We get this one at 2.5 in the Circa contest. And if you're new here, those lines come out on Thursday afternoon and they lock. They do not change for the rest of the week. I really like Tennessee here if we don't see CJ Stroud for Houston. And as of right now, I don't think we're going to see him. He remains in concussion protocol, did not practice, was not available on Thursday. In addition to that, Nico Collins did not practice on Thursday. Noah Brown remained limited at practice today. Dalton Schultz should be back in the mix. We'll see how much that ultimately impacts things. Will Anderson on the defensive side of the ball for Houston, he is expected to sit out on Sunday. So I think a lot of things pushing me toward Tennessee. Am I getting a little overzealous?
I don't think so. I know that we can run real hot and cold when it comes to Tennessee. Like the Atlanta game really threw us for a loop. It's like, where did that come from? Like Will Levis's NFL debut or first start, and it goes like that. And then he kind of plays like what we mostly expected for like the month following. And then last week he was just guts and just putting it all out there, running over Jalen Ramsey. That was like one of my absolute favorite tweets this week was the still shot of Jalen Ramsey. Like his head was like between his own knees. Like he was getting trucked so hard by a quarterback. Unreal stuff there from Levis. So He goes hard in the paint. I do like Will Levis, but I think that the wheels seem to be kind of falling off for the Texans. They've been an amazing story this year after basically just being a team that we talked about the same way that we talk about the Panthers over the last few years. But those injuries mounting, don't feel great about Stroud, feel less great about the offense generally. No Dell, of course. Collins, I'm very dubious on him playing. Noah Brown, already not a great player to begin with. If he's at less than 100% and you have him, Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie out there, also a running game that I was kind of shocked that it was doing as well as it was there for a little while in November. I think that's coming back to earth a little bit. So everything kind of points me to the Titans, and that makes me a little bit scared because we know that it can go away at any moment with the Titans. 63% of the money is coming in on the Titans, but I'm with the public here, man. I think that the Texans are in a tough spot, and Tennessee, for their own part, has been pretty good against a number at home, 4-2, and they were very close to being 5-1 if that overtime game breaks a little bit differently against Indianapolis the other week.
Hey, man, the public's still running hot. 108, 86, and 6 ATS in public games this season. So I don't know if that's something we should necessarily be running from. To me, it just comes down to Davis Mills. Davis Mills is very bad, and especially when you take away his top two weapons, if Nico Collins doesn't play, it's what are we looking at here, right? We've seen it. We saw it for a couple of years in Houston, what Davis Mills looks like. Even if CJ Stroud were to play, I still might like Tennessee straight up. I think we kind of got a taste of, all right, if you can put pressure on CJ Stroud, which teams have been doing for the last couple of weeks, and you take away some playmakers. Nothing against CJ Stroud. He's still one of the best rookie quarterbacks we've seen, but any quarterback's going to look different under those circumstances. And the downgrade from Stroud to Davis Mills really cannot be overstated. So I love the spot for Tennessee. It's not even an endorsement of Will Levis. I'm not factoring that into my pick whatsoever. I think this is a grind it out, pound Derrick Henry 20 times, sit on the ball, and just don't make mistakes. And if it's Davis Mills on the other side, you probably win that game 80 to 90% of the time.
I'm with you there. Davis Mills, other than just having a giant neck, not a whole lot to speak of there. Levis might even have a stronger neck if they were to get in the weight room and do the neck machine. So, his calling card has been trumped by someone else already. So give me the Titans.
Patriots and the Chiefs. We got the Patriots as 7.5-point home dogs. Our total is down at 37. This one locked at 8 in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs in the Circa contest. So continues to move in favor of New England. That's been the theme throughout the week. This comes down to me of all right, we're going to get an answer, I think, one way or the other on Kansas City, because this is such an obvious, all right, take out our frustrations spot, right? Everything's been going wrong the last couple of weeks. Everybody thinks our offense is broken. If it's truly not broken, then go put up 35 on New England and win this game by 3 or 4 scores. So I think that is in the cards for Kansas City. I think it's also very possible that they struggle again, and then the real alarm bells start going off, right? I'm the most Patrick Mahomes loyal football person that there is. And look, if you struggle against the New England Patriots, that to me is going to set off alarm bells that I didn't think I would be setting off at any point this season. So I think we're going to have an answer on Kansas City one way or the other. Are they capable of one of these, big bounce back type of games against a bad team? I don't know.
Right. I think you detailed this perfectly. The game going one of two ways. Either the Chiefs really exercise their demons here and go kind of crazy on the Patriots. This going into last week on the look ahead, the Chiefs were 10-point favorites for this one, but that's obviously changed in light of the Patriots winning in Pittsburgh and having a little bit of the rest advantage, and the Chiefs continuing to just be stuck in the mud the way they have for the majority of the season. And you almost wonder if the way that game ended last week with the play getting called back, does that take the wind out of their proverbial sails even further? And they don't have a ton of cushion in the AFC West anymore. They've lost a game to the Broncos, who continue to find ways to win ugly. I don't know, but my gut tells me that I think this is the game where the Chiefs wake back up. And I think that the fact that the line has moved the way that it has, I think it works in our favor if we were to go with the Chiefs. I'm not buying that the Patriots really fixed anything last week. I think that, they played well for their own part, probably their best game of the season, but I think a lot of that also has to do with the Steelers probably not being that good, especially when Mitchell Trubisky is in there at quarterback. So I think this game won't be particularly beautiful, but I think, if the Chiefs are holding the Patriots to like 14 points or less, which I think is definitely in the cards, because I don't think that the Chiefs defense gets enough credit. I think that it's going to be hard to hold the Chiefs under 21. Mm-hmm. So I think that the Chiefs end up taking this one and getting the cover.
Yeah, I think it's moved a little bit too far in favor of New England, and I'm certainly a lot more comfortable taking KC here than I would be at 10.5. So I like the Chiefs as well. I'm not expecting a full blown we're back type of performance. I don't know if the Chiefs are even capable of that right now, especially against a New England defense that can still somewhat hold its own, especially against the run. So I think there will be opportunities for Kansas City to run away with this game, but I don't think we're going to come away feeling any differently about either of these teams. I think it'll be all right, Kansas City took care of business, but they didn't really send any kind of message to the rest of the NFL. KC defense, by the way, has allowed 8 straight 100+ yard games. Something to consider. I mean, not that New England is great at running the ball. I think they're like bottom 7 in terms of yards per attempt, DPA, things like that. And it's hard to imagine New England keeping pace by simply gashing them on the ground, but that was something that stood out last week against Buffalo. I don't know why the Bills went away from it. Like, that's how they built the lead in the first place, was just James Cook over and over, just 7-8 yards per carry, and they completely got away from it in the second half. So it'll be interesting to see, without Ramondre, is New England able to get anything going on the ground as a way to try to hang around? But I'm with you overall. I would trust the Chiefs here -7.5, and I actually like that one quite a bit. Niners Cardinals, biggest spread of the week. It feels like the Niners are involved in that basically every week now. They are 12.5-point road favorites at Arizona. This is almost a default pick for me at this point. I know Arizona's coming off of a bye. They had the big win against Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. Also just a weird game, multiple weather delays. Pittsburgh was just kind of malaise from the start, and I thought Arizona played about as well as it possibly could have. I think we see Arizona come crashing back down here. I really like San Francisco, even on the road. To me, when they're fully healthy, like they're just, I don't view them like I view other teams. Like I don't really feel like they're susceptible to a big letdown here at Arizona. And obviously we feel great about them winning this game straight up, but I really like it in San Francisco, even with the number.
Well, I generally would be with you, and like the Niners have been my best bet. I feel like more often than not, especially since their bye week. But I did see an interesting tweet. We bring this guy up every week. Our guy, John Ewing, does a lot of betting analytics. He says that since 2003, double-digit road favorites are 52-73. That's 42% against the spread. And that includes 19-38 against the spread in December and January. So those are concerning trends. And, San Francisco, I don't know if you could really blame them for viewing this as a bit of a look ahead. They got the Ravens on Christmas at home. I think I don't think we're going to get their sharpest game. I don't know if if it really means much against the Cardinals necessarily, but with the number being what it is, and the Cardinals coming off the bye, I don't know. For me, that this one is something that I'm less inclined to just like lock in and forget about it. Unlike how it's been with me and the Niners, basically since their bye.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, it's a big number, and especially on the road against a team that has a good quarterback, right? And a team that I think has maximized its talent for the most part this season, despite their record. I just think the 49ers look impenetrable to me right now, and I don't think they need to even play a great game to win by 2 scores. That's the thing with San Francisco. Is like they could play against a team like Arizona, they could play like a B-level game and probably find their way to a 13-point win, right? And for me, it's mostly Arizona's defense. Like I don't think the bye week is solving anything. They're 31st in EPA, dead last in success rate, 30th in pressure rate. They're not going to be able to get after Brock Purdy whatsoever. The Cardinals have also been terrible in division for the last couple of years, 1-12 ATS in their last 13 games against divisional opponents. They have not covered a home division game since October of 2021. Kyler Murray, 1-3 ATS coming off of a bye, 4-8 ATS on extended rest in his career. So if you're thinking about the bye, to me, that's just not really that much of a factor, but I get it. I mean, I do think I think Kyler could do enough. Like if the Cardinals cover this game, it would be in the backdoor fashion, right? Like I don't see this being a back and forth game where we don't know who's going to win going into the fourth quarter. To me, it would be San Francisco, letting up 10 points in the fourth quarter, and you lose what felt like was going to be a sure cover.
And Cardinals have done that a couple times this year. Well, it wasn't backdoor against the Cowboys, of course, but they did that to the Ravens. Yeah, right through, straight. Not even ringing the doorbell. But I guess we're going to end up probably being split here. Maybe opt to leave this one off. But my feel on this one is Cardinals, just the inflated spread here.
Okay, a game that I really like as we get into the late window on Sunday, Commanders-Rams. 6.5 point favorites at home. That's where the number locked in Circa. This is my Nick Whalen. I'm concerned how much I like this one, and I'll probably be wrong. Game of the week. This would be such a Commander spot to just show up, and this ends up being a game where both teams are in the 30s. I just feel like the Rams are trending in the right direction, even after coming off of a loss last week against Baltimore. Like I feel better about the Rams, hanging with the Ravens, losing, on somewhat of a fluky play in overtime, getting to 30 plus for the third straight week against what might be the best defense in the NFL on the road. They're mostly healthy coming out of that game. Kyron Williams is running wild. They got Nakua and Cooper Kupp both putting up big numbers every week. Like I think there's a lot to like about the Rams, and the Rams are also, they're motivated, right? I mean, they're 6-7. They need to keep winning. This is arguably their easiest remaining game on the schedule. Like, you need to get a win here. You need to win convincingly, to hang around in the NFC wildcard race. The question is, do we get the Sam Howell berserker game?
That's the concern, right? I mean, Washington coming off the bye, that they're just going to be chucking it. So that Rams secondary in particular is going to be tested. They gave up 300 yards through the air to Lamar Jackson last week. I'm with you with the way you characterized it, in that I don't see how the Rams don't cover this. I think the Rams have been all over the map this year, and I think that they've vaulted their way towards being a respectable team that's, absolutely in the playoff hunt. I think that there's a massive coaching edge in favor of the Rams in this spot. And, like you said, you're looking ahead a little bit as far as the rest of the schedule goes. Like, you have to have this one. I think Washington off the bye, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they have problems that can't be fixed in a 2-week span. I love the Rams here. I love them a lot. I think that they really could kind of put a hurting on Washington here, because for their own part, the offense, especially through the air, presents such a huge mismatch against this Washington secondary.
Ron Rivera 5-10 against the number coming off of a bye in his career. So traditionally, it's not necessarily been an advantage spot for him. Commanders dead last in points allowed, dead last in points per drive, especially bad against the pass. They've also allowed 100 plus rush yards in 10 of 12 games since week 1. So there's just not a whole lot pointing me in favor of Washington. You just got to believe that they're going to, kind of snap out of it on offense. And, early in the season, midway through the year, they played the Eagles close a couple of times. They've had those explosive games offensively. They pile up a lot of yardage. But they've also committed a turnover in 7 straight games. They had a 6 turnover game against the Giants. And this defense has gone a full month plus. They've gone like 5 weeks without forcing a single turnover. And again, even if you think this is a good spot for the Washington offense, which I know in the fantasy world, a lot of people do, you're going to have to force a couple of turnovers here, I think, to have a chance to really hang around and keep this within a score. And the defense just hasn't done that. I mean, it's not just lately. Like, they barely forced any turnovers all season. And, to go 4 straight games, against some pretty vulnerable teams and not force any turnovers, I don't know if that really changes this week. So I really, really like the LA Rams, and I want to put that one on the card. Cowboys-Bills, another banger. The Bills are just playing these big games every single week at this point. They are 2-point home favorites for the Dallas Cowboys. 50.5 is our total. Same total as that Commanders-Rams game. Is this another, like, the Bills just find a way because that's how it's going to go type of game? That's how I feel. Like, I can't really put forth why it's going to happen, but it's basically the same reason why I took the Bills last week.
I like the Bills a lot last week. I think I'm stopping short. I think I've been a reluctant Cowboys investor through the first couple months of the season, but I think I'm fully in. I really like the Cowboys. I know that they're much better at home than they are on the road, so that there's some concern there. I don't think the weather's going to be too terrible up in Buffalo, though, luckily, so that definitely helps things. I think Dallas is just the better team. I think they're more opportunistic. I think that Josh Allen makes a lot of mistakes. The Bills tried to give away that game last week. We were texting during the 2-minute saga, just in complete disbelief of what McDermott or Joe Brady or whoever's to blame was doing with their play call sequencing. I don't think you're getting away with that against the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys straight up are better than the Chiefs. So I like the Cowboys here. I like them on the money line. I think it's reasonable for the public to have kind of like caught wind of the fact that the Bills are much better than what their record suggested just a few weeks ago. I tweeted out that I think it was last week, like, oh, they're like 4-1 to make the playoffs. That's going to look a lot different after they beat the Chiefs. It did. They're like plus 115 to make the playoffs now. But I think that this is a game where they it's not a slip up, but I think they do drop this one at home, and the hand wringing about the Bills and what they're going to do this season continues.
Yeah, I think the question is, like, is this a different Dallas team? Because we've been down this road with the Cowboys so many times. Like, they're usually a good regular season team, but this is the type of game that they would always lose, right? And I think you could say last week against Philly, that's typically the type of game that maybe they wouldn't lose, but they wouldn't win it the way they did. So if you think this Dallas team is for real, then yeah, I think Dallas should win this game. They're the better team. They've been the better coach team this year. They've been the far more consistent team this season. And I think there's this belief that, man, you get them out of Jerry World, you get them on the road, they become a different team. And that is true. But I mean, pretty much every team is going to fall victim to that, right? And it's like the Cowboys have almost been punished for how much they beat up on teams at home. But now you're kind of convincing me here because, again, my reason was the Bills, it's just how it's going to go. They're going to win it. Like, I can't give you a good reason why the Bills are going to win. Dallas is better in almost every facet of the game, and they've been that team through the entire season, whereas Buffalo feels like it's just kind of skating by these last couple of weeks. So I'm inclined to trust you on this one. Is it in consideration for the card is the question.
100%. I really do like the Cowboys here. I think that they win this one. And again, the Bills, they're going to be freaking out again as of Monday or Sunday night. I really think that the Cowboys really are, I would say, probably the second best team in football behind the 49ers. This is a huge spot for them to kind of prove that they aren't just we only win when the conditions are favorable. Going into Buffalo in December and making a statement, I feel like that's part of this season's narrative for the Cowboys.
Stephon Diggs, by the way, averaging 53 receiving yards over the last 7 games. That's concerning. Dallas has not had that issue getting CeeDee Lamb going, right? And I think if the Bills aren't able to run for 7 yards a carry for 3/4 of the game like they were against Kansas City, and you got to rely on Josh Allen, I know he's better at home, but that's a dicey proposition to me. I think this Buffalo passing game, is another reason that this team has struggled. The consistency has not been anywhere near where it was last season, the season before, or even earlier this season when Diggs got off to such a great start. But the last thing I'll say about this game, John, is no matter what, we're getting a massive overreaction one way or the other. Like either the Cowboys are winning the Super Bowl or the Bills are back. There's no in between.
I think I might have to tune into First Take and the Herd on Monday, regardless.
All right, our teams facing off. We have completely buried the lead for like an hour here because we got Ravens-Jags in Jacksonville, and not only will this game be played for us to watch on television, like I will be on Sunday night, one of us will be in the house, John, making the trip down to Jacksonville.
That's right, heading down on Saturday. A good friend of mine, fraternity brother, lives down there, and he's a noted Jags fan, and we're going to go to the game together. It's going to be a raucous time. I can't wait. I think the weather's going to be kind of stinky, but that's besides the point, really. I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. I know that like around a week and a half ago, we were freaking out that that this was going to be CJ Beathard, but Trevor Lawrence played last week. He didn't play mistake free, of course. Had the 3 interceptions. I got to imagine he bounces back a little bit this week, but I think it's huge that Kyle Hamilton on the Ravens side of things did not suffer a huge injury because when he was on the field, the Rams were averaging 4.5 yards per play. When he was off, 7.5. So that to me seems significant. So I think that this Ravens defense is going to batten down the hatches. I think having no Christian Kirk is definitely a detriment for the Jags. You've talked about all year the Jags' inability to run the football, like near the bottom of the barrel as far as EPA per rush, all that stuff. So it's really going to be on Trevor Lawrence. I think that this Ravens secondary outside of Hamilton is kind of gettable, but I'm wondering if Press Taylor like has the goods to like make them pay for it. So I think this is going to be a slog on offense as far as the Jags go, and I think the Ravens, for their part, they're just a complete balanced team. They can hurt you with the run. Lamar ran more than we've been used to seeing for a lot of this year last week, and really helped Baltimore win that game by extending drives with his legs. I think we could still see a huge Keaton Mitchell game. Of course, Odell is playing really well. Zay Flowers, kind of had a rough game for most of the afternoon on Sunday, but really kind of, Dumb and Dumber redeemed himself with the octopus to help put the Ravens ahead late. I think it's so hard to shut down the Ravens offense completely. So I think the Ravens are going to get theirs, and I think the Ravens defense slows down the Jags enough. So long story short here, I do think that I'm gonna leave that stadium happy on Sunday night.
I think you will as well. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I would typically go like full negative on Jacksonville here. I don't think they win, but I think they keep it competitive. I think these last 2 weeks have been a pretty serious and much needed wake up call for the Jags, especially defensively. I think they'll be better on that end. But I mean, to me, these are kind of two straight nightmare matchups for a struggling running game, going to Cleveland and then facing what might be an even better and more well-rounded defense in the Ravens. The Jags just can't run the ball. They cannot run the ball on good teams. And I don't care who your quarterback is, who your receivers are, who your offensive coordinator is. Like, that just makes life really, really difficult. It's a really difficult needle to thread when the opponent knows you can't run the ball. And every time you try, you gain like 1 or 2 yards and you find yourself in a 3rd and long. And that's just kind of been the story of the Jaguar season. Now, the defense played so well early on and was generating so many turnovers that it didn't really matter. That slowed down. I know they did get 3 turnovers last week against Cleveland. You can't really depend on that against someone who's not named Joe Flacco. I think Lamar is a bad matchup for the Jaguars, especially if he is willing to run more. Like, that's something I've noticed with him too, where, especially kind of in the middle of the season, you're like, man, these running lanes are there. Like, the old Lamar feels like he's taking these more often. And I think maybe smartly, he's preserved his body a bit more throughout the regular season, considering what's happened in years past. But yep. I think this is kind of a kitchen sink game for the Baltimore offense. I think you put as much pressure on that Jags defense as you can. And I don't really trust the Jags defense in this spot. I think the Jags will score. As much as they miss Christian Kirk, I think they will find ways to put points up, but I do not trust them to stop Baltimore when it really matters. So I see this one being, a game that's played in the mid to high 20s. I would say, Baltimore 28, Jacksonville 23, that type of game.
I can see it, but either way, I think the Ravens get this done, maybe by a slightly larger cushion than just the half point. But either way, I do like the Ravens in this spot. I think that the Jaguars, I still have lingering faith in them. Like, once the postseason comes, and I think that their A game is among the best. But I'm not sure that this is a matchup where it shows through. Give me the Ravens.
That game, by the way, locked at 3 in the Circa contest. It's up to 3.5 now at most books. Eagles-Seahawks. We finished out with Monday Night Football. Eagles 4-point favorites on the road at Seattle. I'm not willing to jump off the Eagles, man. I feel like there's been a lot of Eagles negativity. It's tough. Like, I get the spot. You're going cross country to Seattle. This is, kind of nearing the end of what's been just a crazy, difficult stretch of schedule for Philly. They're banged up. But I can't really mount a case for Seattle not knowing if we're going to see Drew Lock or Geno Smith.
That's where I come down on it as well. I think the last 2 weeks, my best bets have been against the Eagles. But I'm certainly not there with the Seahawks team, talking about them earlier in the show. Very concerned about them. They've lost 4 straight. Again, they've had a gauntlet of their own of late, having to play San Francisco like 2 times in 3 weeks or something, having Dallas interspersed in there. That's pretty brutal on them as well. But the quarterback situation, I think, is really, really troubling as far as our confidence in including this one way or the other in the contest. But I think it is interesting to me nonetheless that the line is what it is, right? I mean, like you said, it's 4 points. Like, that doesn't it seem a little low?
It does. It does seem low. It's a little suspicious. It's a little alarming. I'll give you that. It really depends like how you view the Eagles, right? Because if you're an Eagles believer, like I am, I think for whatever reason they've been the target of criticism that to me has not been all that deserved. But counterpoint, you look at their point differential for the year, And it's not the point differential of a team with their record. All the other teams that are in that zone are like, plus 100 plus. I think the Eagles are like plus 21 on the season.
Defense.
So, it's kind of an eye of the beholder of like, do you give them credit for finding ways to win close games? Or do you look back and say, why are you needing to go, deep into the fourth quarter just to barely squeak out a win over the Commanders?
So, yeah, after the Chiefs game, I was like, okay, they're like that team that hangs in and finds ways to win. But now I'm less certain of that, and I think that they've been kind of knocked off their spot these last couple of weeks, and like Jalen Hurts, as good as he is, like I think he needs to play like within structure. I don't think that he's going to go out there and like if you need him to throw 40 times, that's a good thing for Philly. But again, it all comes down to like, can Seattle put them in that type of spot? Like the Cowboys last week did a great job of shutting off like the open space running lanes for AJ Brown after the catch. Like he was not able to do anything after the catch. That's kind of his calling card. I think that the Seahawks kind of have the secondary personnel to test that, or at least give that a shot. I don't know. This game is impossible to me. I am losing the faith on the Eagles a little bit personally, but I could see them, galvanizing here. Just I am, all told, pretty low on the Seahawks, and this is a gettable number if the Eagles play well. So I side Eagles, but I'm concerned with this game overall as far as including it.
Yeah, I give a slight lean to the Eagles. I would hope that we don't have to include it. We'll do our normal, conversing over the next couple of days and narrow things down. But I wouldn't say I love it. I wouldn't say I love it by any means. And it's kind of a gotta have a game right now for Seattle. And it means a lot for Philly as well. I mean, they can't really trip up the rest of the way with regard to the division or even chasing the 1 seed. But I mean, this is a back against the wall. If you want to make the playoffs, you really feel like you got to win this if you're Seattle. Let's get to the parlays of the week, the teaser of the week, and our best bets, John. Then we'll be on our way. What is your parlay for NFL Week 15?
Okay, so this 3-legged parlay, but there's an optional 4th leg to add onto it. But the core 3: Dallas money line, Denver money line, Tennessee against the spread. That pays out plus 1,082, plus 1082. If you add the Rams against the spread, that turns into plus 2157. So take that for what you will, but that is, again, Dallas money line, Denver money line, Tennessee against the spread, and then if you are feeling froggy, Rams against the spread as well.
Okay, I too have 2 parlays or 2 options here. If you're looking to play it a little bit safer, I'm just taking Bengals money line, Titans money line, Ravens money line. That gets you to basically 3-1 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. But if you're looking for a dog parlay, John, we're taking the Broncos, we're taking the Bears, and we are taking the Dallas Cowboys money lines. That gets you to plus 13-11. So about 13-1.
Okay. All right. So we're seeing some digits there for both of us, some 4-digit parlay potentials here. I feel like between the two of us putting our heads together, the way that we've been running of late, I think one of these is going to come through.
The teaser of the week, we're going with a 6-pointer, and we are going to involve 2 sides and a total. So Miami, we are teasing them down to minus 2.5. At the time that I put this together, they were at -8. So Miami from 8 to 2.5. The Rams, teasing them just down to a 0.5 point. We're going to take the 6.5, take the field goal out of it. They just got to win that game straight up against Washington at home. And I'm teasing the Atlanta-Carolina total up from 33.5 to 39.5. Just a case of like a pick 6, a couple safeties from Desmond Ridder. We want to give ourselves a little bit more insurance. So Miami down to 2.5, Rams down to a 0.5 point, and teasing the Falcons-Panthers total up to 39.5. And of course, going under on that. John, your best bet of the week.
My best bet of the week is the Cowboys. Cowboys money line. I'm feeling it. I think that there's a little bit of to use the Jeff Erickson, a whipsaw of public confidence in the Bills that is going to be shot down this week.
All right. I like it. Putting your money where your mouth is. I will do the same and take the Rams. I can't sit here and say I love this line and then not make it my best bet. So I'm going with the LA Rams to cover 6.5 at home against the moribund Washington Commanders. I know they're coming off of a bye. I don't care. They are bad. The Rams are turning into a good team before our eyes, and they will win that game by at least a touchdown. John, good talking through all these games with you. As always, I got to run. Got to talk NBA on the radio in like 40 minutes here, but enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Jacksonville, man. Looking forward to receiving a bunch of Snapchats, a bunch of texts. I'm sure we'll probably FaceTime at some point on Sunday as well, but live it up, man. I wish I could be there, but enjoy it.
Cheers, man. Appreciate it. And I will be reporting live from what used to be Alltel Stadium.